is ready, if we could take a quick roll call just to ensure we have our quorum.
Sure. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
Okay, here we go. Glenn Geisinger,
Present.
Frank Facciano,
Present.
John Hayes,
Here.
Ron Heckman, Larry Hemberger,
Present.
Glenn Riedman, Mike Stershik.
Here.
Sir, we have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Gillette. I appreciate that very much. And again, I do appreciate everyone being here today with us. Did we have any public comment that was submitted for the meeting?
We do not, sir.
All right, thank you, ma'am. In that case, we will move directly into our action items. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from the October 22nd meeting. I hope everyone had a chance to review those. I would ask for a motion at this time to approve the meeting minutes as presented.
I'll make the motion.
Let's have a motion from John, a second from Mike. Are there any changes, addendums, or questions on the meeting minutes? Having none, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the meeting minutes are approved as presented then. Next item is our October 2020 financial statements. It would probably be easier if we let Todd kind of run through those from the room, and we'll just observe. Todd, are you okay with that?
Sure, I figured that's what I was going to do anyway.
All right, boss.
I got to go into the special Colin spot.
Yep.
This good, Colin? All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to stand up here, kind of go through year-to-date financials. And this month, we're going to try to tie it into our budget because that's the next discussion that we're going to go into, and you can kind of hopefully follow it all the way through. Net income year-to-date, we are $969,000 to the black. If you remember, I believe it was in August that we got into the black. And September and October we've been holding. So we actually had a very good month of October. Some of that was attributable to some things we've been doing behind the scene. We got some additional CARES funding that we did not anticipate for some of our unemployment that we've been working with our unemployment carrier for. So that helped us out to the tune of about 120 some thousand, somewhere around $111,000 on that. We have been working with our workman's comp with some of our payroll things. That came through in October. That was worth another $70,000. So that helped us out significantly in the month of October. We also had better revenue than we anticipated. So again, we've been holding firm. If you remember, we talked about for the month of October, this last quarter, where we're pretty much, most of our CARES money is going. I think we have $381,000 for the last part of the year. It's actually $379,000 because we had to cut it back a little bit. So it's $379,000 that we have for the last quarter of the year. So again, to be in the black. And the other thing is, with our latest forecast, we're actually showing that we should be able to sneak into the black, maybe 100,000, maybe between 100 and 200,000 for year end. Even though we're running 900 and some thousand, we do have a lot of back end expenses, and also we have some revenue that doesn't come in at the end of the year. That's kind of when we have a revenue shortage, we start to get into the icing. There's a lot of things that happen in that last month or two of the year that are somewhat detrimental to our financials. So you can see our year-to-date kind of variances. Again, CARES Act, we're in the black. A lot of that because of that $3.4 million that we show for CARES Act funding. Personnel, we've done our best to kind of do some of this stuff with furloughs and voluntary stuff, so that's helped us out a lot. All the other things we've done to take us down to $9.3 million. Again, you can see that everything we've done, we're still short 463,000, give or take a few bucks there. But again, shortages on ground handling, the icing revenue. airfield revenue, parking revenue, terminal revenue, all those things we've done to kind of mitigate our damages. And the one thing that's on there that hasn't been on there in previous months is depreciation. And that's a big part of some of the capital things that we've done, and it's starting to show up in our year-to-date financials, which is helping us out. Because again, even though we don't actually show them above the line, they do hit below the line. All of our capital items do hit on a depreciation as an amortized expense. And I kind of wanted to give us kind of this something to keep in mind for us, kind of whence we've come. If you go back to 2013, where we were, and these are the things I focus on, overall. First of all, even when we talk about our budget, we wanted to make sure that we make positive net income. It's a positive number. We want to make sure that we cover our debt service, and then obviously we're talking about cash and managing that with a lot of our capital projects. So if you go back to 2013, you see those things are in yellow. Again, like I've said, this is not new to us at the last few months of the year. This is all these are through 10 months. So it's not new to us that the last 2 months of the year are usually a little bit of a struggle for us. So, that's why those ones in 2013, 2014 were in yellow because, it's tough toward the end of the year and you don't know. But if you look at, hopefully I got this right here with this little button. Oops, that didn't work out too good, did it, Tom?
Not really.
No? Okay. But if you can see here on 2013 that the estimated year-to-date debt service, we were actually short in 2013 through 10 months. We barely made the coverage at 1.25 at the end of the year, but we barely made it. Same thing with 2014. That's why those numbers are in yellow. So through year-to-date 13, we would have needed to make about 4.4 million. We were at 4.2 million, call it. So we were treading water trying to make that debt service coverage. Again, for 2014, same thing. We needed to be at 4.3. We were roughly at 4 million. Then you can kind of see 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19 where that was less of a concern for us. So you can see in that one line there, third from the right there, what the actual debt coverage service was as of 10 months, and then where the final number ended up. And you can see actually in 2015, where that's when we refinanced our bond in the fourth quarter, that helped us out significantly. And then also when that happened, starting in 2016, we had a higher debt service coverage because we eliminated our debt service reserve. So it went from 1.25 to 1.57. So again, and you can see our emphasis or organizational focus. If you haven't been here long enough or on our board, you remember 2013 and 14, where every other word was WBF. Every other word was WBF, and that was our focus, and we couldn't get out of WBF if we tried to. Then we got to 2015 with the bond reissue, and that was the last of the WBF, and then we went into 16, 17, where we're in the growth mode. We were able to kind of catch up on some of our deferred capital projects, deferred things that have been hanging out there forever. You can actually see that in the depreciation. Our depreciation, what we pay for, not what we get from the FAA, has pretty much doubled since 2013. So we're projecting to be at 5.5. We were less than, I think it was like 2.6, 2.7 in 2013. So that's all our reinvestment in our infrastructure. Again, growth, Hangar 11, still part of growth, but I said Hangar 11. Growth again, 2013, and then we were still in growth mode for the first 2 months, and then COVID hit. And you can see kind of the difference between, there's that star there where it says without the CARES money and that bond reissue. So if you look at that first one there where it says 2020 with the little star, we would truly be up a creek if we hadn't done some of the things we've done, because without that CARES money, our net income would be a negative 2.4 million. We would have 2 million and change of depreciation, and our debt service coverage would need to be 5.4 million, and we're not even close to that with only 2 months left of the year. You go to that next line, those are the things that we did with the CARES money and reissuing our bonds, and a lot of the other things we've done that kind of get us where those numbers are green. Even though that 969 is a little bit susceptible to maybe being below zero, we still think we're okay. That's why it's red. But the other ones are green. So we got our debt service coverage met. At this point, we should be in good shape to cover that. But again, because we've done that, we can not just focus on COVID, but we can focus on growth. Because at the end of the day, if you don't grow, you die. That's just the way it is. You have to keep growing. And then if you go to 2021, because this is really key as we get into our, one of the things we've done. If you remember in our budget, and we'll talk about that when we go into budget, we received originally 6.2 million of CARES money. And everybody was saying, let's use it all. We're going to use it all. And we're going to get it all right away. I remember those conversations. Oh, we're going to get it all in our account back in April. Didn't quite work out that way. And strategically, we didn't use it all. Plus, we've worked with some of our directors, have worked on getting some additional CARES money. So we reserved basically $3.5 million of that money for the 2021 budget. Had we not done that, you see that other asterisk for 2021, what that would look like for through 10 months on that one right there. So that would be where we would think we would be after 10 months. We would be coming to you saying, we're $3.5 million short on our budget. Please approve it, and let's hope that there's something out there that's approved, another HEROES Act or some kind of CARES Act. So we're not a hoping and a praying kind of folks. Even on the surface, behind the scenes, we're certainly doing that, but we don't rely on outside forces to balance our budget. That's why the things we've done have been critical for us to kind of say, hey, look, we're coming to you with a balanced budget. Had we spent all that money, not reissued our bonds, not done any of these things, we would be really in a tough situation right now, coming to you saying, I don't think we're going to be able to meet our debt service coverage for next year. Just not going to be able to do it. And you see it's still in yellow, even with the things we're doing up there for 5.98 is where we think we'll be, but it still should be a little bit better. We don't think we're going to meet our debt service coverage unless there's some kind of package out there. Unless there's some kind of package out there, we wouldn't be able to do it. But because we did that, we're going to be able to still stay in growth mode, still semi-recovery / growth mode, as opposed to recovery open. Because that's all we would be doing, would be just be in recovery mode. So again, this is kind of a snapshot of where we've been, and it kind of flows right into our budget. And you can see through 10 months in our budget, we expect to be about $809,000 to the positive, but our final budget is about $67,000. So you can see those back end expenses are also in 2021. So at this point, I know I've been kind of running off pretty fast here. I'll open up to if anybody has any questions.
Are there any questions from anybody on the committee at this time?
Good presentation, Todd. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good. Then at this point, I would entertain a motion to approve to accept the financial statements as presented. I have a motion from Frank, a second from John. It looks like I've got waves of hands there. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And if I have any opposed. Very good. Next item on our agenda is to approve the resolution for the public assistance grants. Nada, you want to take this from there as well?
Steve's going to handle it.
Hey, morning,
He's got
Glenn.
it? Okay.
Morning, Glenn. This is really a quick resolution to authorize Tom to apply for grant assistance. It's basically, because the president declared a disaster here in Pennsylvania on March 30th, 2020, we've been permitted to apply for grant assistance for the emergency protective measures we've applied here at the airport. If you look down the list, it's some of our facility disinfectant and sanitation equipment, PPE for employees and staff, hand sanitizing stations throughout the terminal, all of the signage and other safety measures we've put in place, the personal protective barriers or sneeze guards we've applied throughout the terminal. So we basically, in January, Tom, even, January of this year, we started preparing for this pandemic and tracking our expenses. Right now, our application total is for a grant for $69,000, and that's for the reporting period beginning in January through September 14th. And you can kind of see here what our materials and supplies were, what our contractor services, so our application amount is almost $70,000. Our current inventory is $7,000, so they'll kind of pull that off of the total grant amount. So somewhere around $62,500 will be the grant application. We continue to work with FEMA. I know we've been back and forth with some of our, some of the items that we've applied for may or may not be approved, but we continue to work with them through our emergency management group. So I don't know if anybody has any questions at this point.
Anybody have any questions at all at this time?
I'd move to approve as presented.
It's been moved, a motion is on the table to approve as
Second.
presented. I have a second from Mr. Sturgill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And if I have any opposed, by the same. All right, very good. Thank you very much, Steve. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Now we're gonna move on to the 2021 operating budget, and this one I know is Todd.
Are you sure there, Glenn?
Oh, I'm positive, my friend. You got this one. You're gonna.
I'm working on that little thing.
Before we do get into it, though, it was sent out in advance. I hope everybody had the opportunity to at least give it a fairly good once over. There's quite a bit in it, but we'll try and keep it as expedited as possible while still covering it appropriately. So thanks, Todd.
Yeah, so at the end, I'll certainly open it up to questions at the end. But a lot of this is stuff that we went over last month. But again, it's just finalizing some of the assumptions that we talked about last month. So again, kind of piggybacking on what we talked about a little earlier, things we've done to kind of set us up so we can come to you with a balanced budget for 2021. We're set in place in 2020 early so that we can come to you now with this budget. Again, our goals our vision is pretty basic stuff there. We want to be financially responsible, strategic, and manage expectations. If you've seen this before, obviously you can nod your head. I won't see it because I have the screen up, but I'll believe you if you're nodding your head. Last year's goals, a little bit different than they are this year. Again, we're somewhat in survival mode this year. Last year, we were still fully in growth mode. So this year, a little bit different. But again, you can kind of see some of the differences, last year's goals versus this year's goals. And again, like I said before, when I look at these budgets, the one thing that I want to make sure that we try to accomplish is make sure that we make at least $1. We're a public entity for the most part, quasi-government, but we're not here to make a ton of money, but we certainly want to be self-sustaining and make sure that we are fiscally responsible. We certainly want to make sure we meet our debt service coverage. If you heard me before, it's 1.57. And this year we reminded folks again that we can change our rates. We've always had the ability to change our rates anytime we would like with the airlines. But when you look at some of our rates, that's not something that we tried to exercise because, again, we want to remain as competitive as possible given the circumstances. Some of the assumptions we went through last month, most of them are the same. Again, you see at number 3 there, where we're talking about the $3.5 million that we kind of carried over from this year's CARES Act into next year. And again, a reminder on number 2 that, hey, if we need to, we can break that glass and increase rates. I'm sure the airlines will be thrilled if we do that, but certainly that's a break the glass option if we need it. You can kind of go through the flights, which we talked about last month. They've just been updated to reflect the year-to-date through October. Again, employments here. Again, when we talked about how aggressive this budget is as far as revenue, you can really see it on the employment number there. If you look at D 166, so if you annualize that number, it's about 199, 200, call it, and we're projecting 305. And you gotta remember, we had 2.5 great months this year to start out with. So again, these were on the aggressive side of our revenue projections, a little bit out of my comfort zone, but certainly, this is where there is some faith involved in us kind of reaching those plateaus. Obviously, it's not where we were in 2019, but it is the higher end of whatever those projections were a few weeks ago, because these things change pretty much every week. Number 8, you get the final numbers are about 10% over our budgeted numbers. We did decrease the terminal 3%. The final rates and charges will just shift. Who pays what? It's based on the new methodology, which we're working on with the airlines, and hopefully we'll have something done first quarter. I see Darren shaking his head. Maybe it'll be the second quarter. So again, you can just kind of see where we are. A lot of our revenue numbers, 60%. We talked about the de-icing last month, and a lot of that is because that's the cargo stuff, which is not as directly impacted by some of the reductions on the passenger side. Again, you can just see what's going on. Our full-time equivalents, actual, 242. Our budgeted numbers, 185. I think right now we're about 173. But then that's an average for the year, 185. Again, this is just something that we're monitoring. Again, if you look at our overall budget, again, if you look even at this year versus last year, 75% of our total expenses are for salaries and benefits. 75% of our total budget is for salaries and benefits. So when you think about that number, that's why this number is important. Again, we put in some, assumptions there. We push back, obviously, the new non-union increase to that second half because, again, we have the ability, if need be, to kind of see what the landscape is, kind of slowly go into, that second, third quarter, see what's going on. And remember, last year, or this year, should I say, is we had a really good year as far as snow. 300,000 is kind of the number that we anticipate. We were less than 100, I believe. So again, we don't know what's going to happen, but that's why we're monitoring this, and that's why that stuff is pushed back as much as we can to see what's going on before we commit to any more expenses early on. Again, you can see the same assumptions that we made last month, pretty much sticking with the same plans. Obviously, those costs have went up like everything else on the insurance plan. These are simple assumptions. Again, most of these are reasonable based on where we are and what's going on with us. Then you get into here where you can just see on our medical, again, any surplus that we get in 2020 counts as a negative expense in 2021. So we budgeted 150,000. We're running 427 through September. So that might give us a little cushion. But again, there's a lot of things in play. I like to have a little cushion because remember, we're not a big revenue generating budget here. We don't generate a whole ton of net income. If you look at our budget, it's about 67,000 net. So any little cushions that we need, bad winter, bad something, we are going to need some of that, and that's why we want to be able to adjust in the second half. Again, kind of on what I've talked about before, a balanced budget. That means that we're actually going to show being in the black year to date. I think, as I mentioned, about 67,000. You can see where we would be. Actually, that's at 68,000, so I'm off 1,000, sorry. But you can see that we would be negative 3.4 million and change had we not strategically held on to that $3.5 million for 2021. Again, meeting our debt service coverage. And I wanted to point out number 5 there because it's really important for people that are tuning into our budget for the first time, 4 and 5. Number 1, we have some money budgeted for bad debt, $250,000. those kind of things kind of roll up on you all at once. So maybe that's some extra cushion, maybe not, who knows? But certainly we had to budget that just because it's not just our business that's impacted, it's our concessionaires, it's everyone that we do business with. They've got issues as well, so we have to worry about that. But the capitalization threshold, when you talk about that depreciation number, that means anything over $5,000 that's got a useful life of 3 years or more is going to show up in depreciation. That's just an amortized number. So that's such a low number, and you say, hey, you're making all this money before depreciation. You got to remember, anything above 5,000 with a useful life of 3 years or more is going to show up in depreciation. Our depreciation, the things that we pay for, show up on our depreciation. And if you go back to our audit, and that's one of the big things that's different between our internal financials that we give you every month versus our audit, is the depreciation and the grant income. So on our audit, just as a reminder, we show all the depreciation. For example, the runway, all the things that are paid for by grants, those are covered in the depreciation on the audit of everything. Because whether or not we get a grant or not, it's something that's depreciated and we have to replace them. It's just part of our ongoing business. And if we didn't get those grants, we'd be in trouble. So we show the grant income, all the grant income in that particular year, and then all the amortized depreciation, not just our share. So our share shows up on our internals, just the stuff that we pay for. So if we pay for something, our share depreciation shows up here. That's the biggest difference when you look at the financials. Again, so all of this stuff eventually hits our operating budget in one way or another that we pay for. It's just maybe below the line or above the line. This is kind of our landing fees here. You can see it's about 9.6 increase, and this is versus budgeted number. Now, our final settlement number, and I'll talk about that in a minute, was closer to $4 at the end of 2019. We settled up on, that would have been the final settlement number, although we didn't pay that out. We held that strategically to settle up after this year. So again, the final number was $4, but our budget number was $4.70, but we're going to $5.15. So when I talk about breaking that glass in that second half, you're already talking about a number that's over 5. If you remember, we tried to get that number below 4. That was our goal, to try to get that number below 4. Just based, we're going in the wrong direction. A lot of that because of things that are beyond our control, with the reduction in flights and employments and all of that stuff is just going to suppress that number. But again, obviously, if you're going up, you don't want to keep breaking that glass, because there's a point when the airlines will be at a point of no return when they say you're just too expensive. And then I'm going to walk through the revenue pieces, just kind of summarizing where we are. And again, kind of walk through all these things here. You can kind of see what's happening overall. We're about $8 million less in revenue, and about $7 million less in expenses. Again, you can see, what's going on there. As we are still in survival mode. And just to keep in mind, oops, I'm going too fast here. I went the wrong way. I always get this. Okay. Just to keep in mind here, a lot of these expenses have been pushed back to the second half, if possible. So that's part of the other part of just kind of monitoring things. If it's not critical, we pushed a lot of things back to the second half, aligned with our ability to increase rates, but again, to determine how critical it is at that point. We're monitoring these situations regularly, but again, it's important for you to understand that not all these things are going to hit early in the year. Interest, obviously, down versus last year, just because we have less cash in the bank. And then you can see that bottom line number, $67,679. Again, that's a whopping number, isn't it? Yes, that's us making all the money we can make. But again, it shows us being self-sufficient with that CARES Act money of $3.5 million, and we're holding firm until things improve. Again, this is cash flow. It'll tie into kind of Ryan's stuff there. Pretty similar to what we started out with last year. Almost, let's call it 2020 do-over. Basically an $8,000 difference, but then you're talking about some of the things that you go through. And a big number here, you know, when we started out, and you see it in there on the, you don't really see it here because at the beginning of the year, our debt service was, you know, nothing changed, but some of those numbers went up. You can see they went up slightly versus what it would have been last year because of some of our deferrals and some of the things we've done there. You can see what's happening to our PFCs and CFCs. Again, impacting our cash and some of the things we're doing long term. So again, everything's been impacted, and this is just us in survival mode, but still keeping growth in our sites. Again, walking through, if you remember, last year we were talking about the Rockefeller sale, beginning of the year. COVID happened and that didn't happen, so hopefully, like I said, it's a do-over. And we'll get it over done this January, or maybe even December, who knows, but certainly, again, like I said, it's a do-over. A lot of those deferrals on capital projects and certain things are now rolling over into 2021 because we can't defer them forever. They were necessary. We just pushed them off momentarily during 2020. You can see that $3.5 million, again, really important that you're coming up with $3.5 million to help you out. And all of that $3.5 million is projected to be in the first 7 months of 2021. So we're expecting to use all that CARES money in the first 7 months of 2021. So again, that's why we're keeping an eye on some of that back end stuff. Again, and in cash here, you see where we are. And if you go down to that number there, we still kept the contingencies and reserves for additional debt service because again, that's on our radar. If you look at the unrestricted cash after contingency, it's $4 million there versus 4.9. And you say, well, how come the cash on hand went up? Is because our expense burn per day went down. I think we went from 68,000 to about 48,000. So we have a $20,000 burn less in our expenses, and that's why, again, we have more cash on hand because we're burning less on our daily burn. Again, we had talked about this last month, and this was requested, kind of our 2019 landing fee comparison versus some of our peer airports. You can see that one, I guess that's an orangish color, is $4. That's why I said that was our final settled number for 2019, $4, but now for our budget, we're showing $5.15. Different than the budget, but obviously, you know, it's reflective of what's going on overall. You can see versus other airports, we were moving in the right direction. Again, if you remember, our budget for last year was $4.70. Final number was $4. So we were moving below that $4 number that we were so hopeful of getting below that number. And we were there. We were right there at $4. But then obviously now we're in COVIDville and we're dealing with $5.15 and maybe, you know, who knows what happens next year. Maybe hopefully that number will start to go back down again. But you can see versus other airports, I think we've made up a relative difference than we were in previous years. A lot of their numbers stayed stagnant. Our numbers actually came down. So even though it looks like we're not as competitive as some of them, we were less competitive in 2018. That number pushed down, so our number kept coming down. Their numbers were close to or even going up a little bit. CPE, again, you don't know how relevant it is in today's times because of the adjustment in employment, but you can see, you know, final number for last year was 1433. Again, like I said earlier, our costs were going down versus everybody else's costs that were somewhat staying the same or going up a little bit. But again, you can see that number estimated for 2021 budget at over $20. Again, a lot of that due to the reduction in employment. And I think that's my last slide. And then at this point, I'll open it up if anybody has any questions or concerns.
Let's open it up for any questions.
That 515 on the landing fees,
Yes.
you think that's hurt us recruiting new service or expanding service, or can we live with that 515?
Well, again, that 515, and I'll certainly let Tom and Darren chime in on these things, but certainly, again, if you remember last year, we pushed that number down. Our budgeted number, if you remember, our budgeted number for 2020 was $4.70, I believe it was. Our number for 2019, I believe, was $4.74. So our final number, even though we budgeted, we charged them $4.74, was $4. So we were coming down and making us a little bit more competitive. This year, $5.15 is going up, but everybody else is going up too because everybody else is in the same world as us. So our relative difference probably did not change that much, but $5 sounds like a lot of money when you're dealing with the airline. So I don't know if Tom or Darren has any additional thoughts on that.
Yeah, Larry, I mean, it's certainly, I think to Todd's point, we're comparing, what we forecast 2021 to look like, and we're sort of benchmarking against what 2019 looked like for a lot of airports. But Todd is right. Every airport is going to see that uptick in that landed rate. And that's just a function of the reduction in the amount of landed weight at airports across the country. So all airports, if we're benchmarking budget to budget, I think you're going to see that standard uptick. And that's just the reality of the fewer landings that we're seeing at airports now.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is, as we've talked to our consultants and talked to some of the airlines, sort of the word of the industry is no one's even looking at CP real close right now because everyone knows it's going to go up. Obviously we need to control it. We need to find a way to get it to come back down. But it's, I hate seeing that over 5 for sure, but I think we all understand that this is sort of hopefully just an anomaly, and we're, eventually we're going to see that come back down and get back to a number that, start the trend the way it was headed before.
And what we've done, and piggyback on that, is we've cut, if you go back to our expenses, we've cut them as low as we can cut them. I jokingly said we're going to start keeping track of how many times people are going to the bathroom to keep our expenses even lower. But again, there's not much more we can do without disrupting operations at the airport at this point. Again, if you remember during the pandemic, it would have been easier for us to shut it down. It really would have been for a couple of months. It would have been easier for us, both from a financial standpoint and from an operations standpoint, to just say, we're going to shut it down for 60 days or whatever, and then pick things back up. But we weren't able to do that, and we've had to kind of maintain operations with, portions of revenue that we were expecting.
Follow-up question in terms of our competitive airports and the landing fees. I know that we're not going to have anything concrete on this yet, but are we hearing anything in the wind regarding any of our competitor airports getting additional municipal support from their locality in order to drive their number down a little bit? I know we run into, I think it's Atlantic City, if I remember correctly, their fire and EMS services are paid for by Atlantic County. They're not absorbed by the airport, so their landing fee looks artificially low. I'm going to keep following up on Glenn's comment a meeting or two ago regarding taking the opportunity to take advantage of disruption to pick up market share. And this is one of the ways that we may have some competitive pressures that we don't otherwise see, or we see more of a competitive pressure than we would otherwise see. So are we hearing anything in the wind at this point about that yet?
It's a good question, John. I have not heard anything in terms of that. I know some of our competitor airports who do receive additional funding or support from their municipality or locale are also experiencing the same sort of volume-based reduction in their revenue, their budgets as well. And so, from kind of just reading the tea leaves there, I would assume that they're going to see as well that same sort of reduction in income based on the decreased volume, whether it's fees on a toll road or those types of things that we see at some of our peer airports.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? And I did want to point out two things. First, everybody wave to Karen, who's there in the backup. I appreciate all her hard work. She's actually smiling now. She had that fiscal responsibility look on her face for a minute there. But also wanted to point out that I don't know if anybody saw in the little write-up that we do an executive summary, that our pension year-to-date through, I believe it was the 19th, is up over 9%. Again, that was a concern for next year as you talk about, meeting our 7.5% return. And the funny thing is, it tells you can't time the market, is through the end of October, it was 2.1%. So we basically picked up about 7 points in 3 weeks to kind of make sure that we can hopefully meet our debt service, not our debt service, but our assumed rate of return on our pension plans by year end, which obviously impacts us operationally down the road. So that was good news to hear that, during that 3 weeks, we made up in the ground that we needed to kind of, hold true for the year.
Remember, Todd, what giveth can also be taken away.
Well, I'm enjoying it while it lasts there, John. Let me enjoy it for a minute. Tomorrow it might change, but let me enjoy it for 5 minutes here.
Well, at least so far, you're off to a good start today. I think you'll get another day. Market's up 250 at this point. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Todd. I'll register my annual objection to how high our assumed rate is and then forget about it because we're not going to do anything about it now anyway.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
All right. Well, and I do appreciate the fact that John had the opportunity to raise his annual objections to the rate that we use for our pension.
Yeah, which I've been doing on a quarterly basis in case anyone noticed.
All right. At this point, I would ask for a motion to approve the 2021 operating budget as presented.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And if I have any opposed by the same sign. Very good. And then at this
And Glenn,
point,
if I could for 1 second, just wanted to reiterate what I said a second ago. Todd, great job in terms of putting together the budget. There are a lot of moving parts. Great job, team, as well, because I know everybody's got input and a role in the process of putting the budget together. This is not an easy time to try to put things like this together. We had the governor announce last week restrictions in terms of inbound state traffic and outbound and coming back people. It makes it exceptionally difficult to try to forecast anything. So we all know it's a moving target, and I know we're going to revisit the budget a lot as we get into 2021, but I just wanted to thank everybody for their efforts to continue to work on these kinds of things.
Thank you, John. It is a team. It is a team budget.
Yep, definitely.
thank you for that, John. Appreciate it. All right.
Yep.
We're going to approve we are now looking to approve the 2021 Air Capital Improvement Program, or ACIP program. All right. Who's, Todd, you got this one too?
No, it's Ryan,
Ryan's got this one? Okay.
Yep. All right, good morning, everybody. So as we just mentioned, this program is definitely a team approach. We definitely took a harder look this year compared to previous years at some of our capital projects, but I'll run through some of our assumptions like we did last month and then get into the numbers, which Todd kind of showed some of them earlier. So again, we talked about contingencies. We talked about prioritizing projects or equipment by quarter. And what some of the parameters are that have it on the list in terms of ensuring safety, continued service, emergency or business critical, and then some of those strategic focus and regulatory items. So you'll see here, if you looked at the packet, in the back, the different exhibits for the capital program. We tried to simplify it this year by having not some of the larger pages, just kind of consolidating. And then you can see we broke out some of the different parameters in terms of the requirements with the emergency business critical, just to make it a little cleaner. So again, like we did last month, kind of looking at what we spent in the past 5 years, and then looking at the 2021 budget, and again, as Todd was showing with some of the numbers, 43.4 million total cost, 19.6 LNAA share, and I'll go into the details of where those break out. So as you can see here, the big expenses in terms of projects for next year are the runway rehab project with all of the various phases. You're looking at around 19 million or so. And the terminal connector security checkpoint, as we've been talking about, we've programmed that in as well, which we'll talk into some of the details with that project at Business Committee. But those have been updated with a lot of the latest numbers that we have. Again, all of the grants. All of the grants and the receipts are put in there, so our share is shown as part of that. And again, the total for just the FA and state grants, as you'll see, is the 34.9 total, and then our share is about 12.9. So going in, again, this is still in the Exhibit A, the 2021 projects. There's 5 major non-grant projects that we're showing. Again, business critical, ensure continued operations. We mentioned kind of leveraging funding, so depending on some of those projects, and continuing forward as best we can. Also, as Todd alluded to, all of the ones that aren't currently in progress, so basically the last 3, or don't have current contracts for, are programmed towards the latter part of next year, just from a cash flow perspective, just to keep that in mind. Again, as part of the Exhibit A, kind of wanted to draw a little bit of attention here because it's different from what we did last year, but I think it's definitely a little bit cleaner as we kind of talk through it as a group. So you'll kind of see on the top here, this 2020 allocated projects. What we ended up doing, and we talked a little bit about this last month, is any projects that were physically complete, we're depreciating, we're going through the process, yet there's still some outstanding payments required, some of the retainage, the warranty time period, that's been all consolidated into one line. So you're not seeing additional projects on the list that we're really not moving forward as additional new projects. The cumulative department spending, this 1.246 you'll see on Exhibit B. I'll get to in a minute. Again, those tie together. And then the cash flow adjustments is basically the difference between the timing of our grant reimbursements and when we get the project payments. So if you actually go back and look at the runway, you'll see, and some of the notes, is the 90% for the FA share, the 5% for us, the 5% from the state. Doesn't necessarily tie the two out when you look at the numbers, just because of the timing of payments we made this past month, November and then December, and then the reimbursements we're getting in January and then even at the end of the year. So it's just a timing thing, as we always talk through as we're working through getting the reimbursements in. So again, the numbers that Todd showed earlier, the 43.4 and then 19.6, is our share for 2021. Again, I mentioned Exhibit B, 19 departmental projects. Just as some context, last year we had 47. So again, looking at what we're doing to streamline the process. And then we programmed them by quarter. So again, starting with a few in Q2, if we can do them, and then going out from there. And then those are broken out by the category on Exhibit C through E in the packet. You get the next slide, sorry.
I have to click on it.
Ryan, can I ask you a quick question on that slide right there?
Sure. That's the last one. Yeah, sure.
This is Brian. The GPU for Hangar 11,
Yes.
is that a AC GPU?
Do you have a chance?
We haven't ordered anything yet, obviously, so,
Okay. It's,
exactly sure what we'll be getting.
So actually, I thought there were more slides, but that's actually the last one. So again, Exhibit A is the 2021. Exhibit B has all of the 2021 departmental, and then the further out exhibits have the remainder of the 5-year capital program, the 2022 through 2025. So are there any questions?
Does anybody have any questions on Ryan's presentation as we got it?
Ryan Larry Hamburger, I just had one quick question.
Sure.
In your view, with all these projects that are still in the pipeline, which one of these would be the most critical that has to get done?
I think it's hard to choose, but other than the runway that we're continuing through, the terminal connector, I think, is the biggest one that is critical from a timing perspective, as we've talked about some of our other committee meetings, is even though we're at kind of a lull or down in traffic, by the time we're anticipating it to return, we really need that project in place. So it's really important to continue pushing that forward. So I think, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think that's the big one from my viewpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
Just a generic question briefly. Some of the items that are slated for work, the useful lives seem to be short to me in some instances. So that's more generic. Todd, are you lowballing that again?
Most of it is, equipment, we're assuming 5 years. Some of the other ones, we're not trying to be too conservative, but, the other piece we try and look at is the FAA actually has criteria for useful life, which sometimes might be a little shorter than you might have seen or anticipated.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I like the conservative number there, John, just so you know.
Yep. No, that's what I figured. I just wanted to clarify. So it's like a bathroom should last longer than 5 years.
Right, well, that's actually just the design that's on there, so you're right, the actual construction
Yep.
would be more, yep.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Okay, do we have any other comments or questions?
No, just stating the obvious as to what we have to spend. I do like the ongoing ranking in terms of, what's got to get done right now, period, end of story, what's business critical, what's regulatory. That identification is good because as we get into 2021, this is going to be a moving target as well as to timing of a number of these kinds of things. When we base it with our cash flow capacity and the piece that we need to fund. So tracking it like this helps that a lot. I like the quarter by quarter approach very much.
Good. Great, no,
Great,
thanks.
thanks, John.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, then if we have no further questions or comments, I would ask for a motion to approve the 2021 ASIP as presented.
So moved.
Moved.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
If I have any opposed. Very good. Are there any new business items that need to come before the committee at this time?
Nothing for new business, Mr. Chair.
Very good. And then before we move to an adjournment, then I would like to second, John kind of stole my thunder earlier, but I'd like to second what he said.
Because you made that comment about the Eagles.
Yes, I too was stating the obvious, I think. I'd like to thank everybody. I've watched the staff, I've watched senior leadership, I've watched everybody work, the directors, the members of the board, the governors work together through a very, very difficult year. I've had the opportunity to sit on this board back when, as Todd indicated, WBF was everything. We got out of that. We saw a lot of growth. I think we have our focus in the right direction. And, but as John indicated, this has been the most difficult year, I think, budgeting in a long, long time, because we have no idea what's going to change day to day. We get some fairly decent numbers out of October, and the CDC comes out the next day and tells us, you shouldn't travel. So I'd like to thank everyone for their involvement, their input, and their efforts to put this all together this year. So thank you to everyone very much.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Glenn. Appreciate it.
Yep, ditto.
Yeah. All right, at this time, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved and seconded. All right, we are out.
See you, folks.
We got to take a couple of minutes before the next meeting starts.
Yeah, so that I was just going to ask what your thought is. We can either roll right into it or take a minute. Maybe it's good. Maybe we'll just go till 9:30 or sorry, 10:30. We'll get a 10:30 start.
Okay.
Okay,
Sounds good.
10:30 start, so we'll see you in about 5.
Sounds good. It can be all Eagles and Redskins talk if somebody's going to win the division with 5 wins. It's not going to be pretty. we have our attorneys on for our executive committee meeting, so we're gonna be cognizant of time on the 9:30, or excuse me, on the business committee.
Sure thing. Would you like
Okay.
me to start with roll call?
Yeah, why don't you throw the business committee agenda up? But yeah, go ahead and do a roll call vote on, or a roll call on attendance for a quorum.
Okay. Brian Dames,
Here.
Chuck Dicon,
Here. If you heard that.
yes, I did get you, Brian, thank you. Chuck Dicon, Jeff Matskin, Mike Stershik,
Here.
Chris Worley, Tara Zirinsky,
I don't think we have a
we
quorum.
only have four members of the
I
committee.
guess we'll just have to hold the meeting minutes until the next time we meet then,
Okay, thank you,
because we have no other action items.
correct.
Do we have any public comment for today's meeting?
We do not, sir.
Okay. So we're gonna hold meeting minutes until, I guess it'll be our January meeting, because we're not anticipating a meeting in December.
No
Ryan, do you want to
meetings.
walk us through a capital projects update?
Sure. Yep, thanks, Matt. So, morning again. All right, so we're doing this time, since we have a GA update, all the GA capital slides will be in the GA update. So this one actually a little bit shorter than it typically is. But looking at the runway 624 project, the current work is around the work around the localizer, which is on the 24 end of the runway. They're done for the paving this year, which I think I mentioned previously. Again, you can see the areas in blue that are substantially complete. Again, they're working really in this area back here, the 24 end. I think as we mentioned in the last committee, taking advantage of some of the funds that were unallocated from, or savings that we had from the extended construction window, we were able to pave taxiway Alpha and Alpha 5 through the grant funds with the final additional lift in the spring of 2021. But that's substantially complete, much better than it was prior to construction. And then again, you can see the new paved service road on the 24 end as well. So security checkpoint, again, we mentioned in the budget, definitely a critical project we're looking to do. We'll probably have some more discussion on this later as well, but just kind of a quick summary for the committee. We did have bid opening November 2nd. We did receive a total of 10 bids electronically. 2 bids were submitted late. They weren't the low bid. They didn't have the low bid numbers, but we did get 2 that were late. 5 for the GC, 3 for the electrical, and then 1 for mechanical and plumbing that we did receive. But the big thing that I highlighted in green, just to take note of, is total bid amount was about 15.3 below the engineer's estimate, for about 4.4 million less than that estimate. And if you recall, Cedric, I know some of his presentations can be pretty long with a lot of the details, but throughout the process when we were dealing with COVID, this 10 to 20% savings conversation kept coming up of potential savings given the current environment. So that's definitely a testament to what they put together and what we're seeing. So really where we are right now, forming bid evaluation and due diligence to confirm contractor's performance. As we mentioned before, we had a lot of different questions, so there's more than just the low bid price. And then we're actually looking to potentially hold a special board meeting in December to award that contract. Currently, the low bid for the GC is actually Bracy Construction. They're the ones who just did our office renovations. And then a lot of the other bidders were contractors that we worked with before. So more of the detail to come in December, but just wanted to bring that to the committee's attention. But a couple items that did change since last month. We submitted a $3 million PennDOT multimodal application beginning of the month, And then just last week, we got final land development approval from Hanover Township. So we're working through all the paperwork that we need to do there, which was really one of our last permits that we were waiting for the project. Main terminal parking lot rehab, they're still doing work out there, but I did, just to point out to the committee, I did change this one from a scheduled standpoint to yellow. In terms of our finances, we're still in the green, but from a scheduling perspective, getting the permits from the township took a little bit longer than anticipated because some additional requirements that came up. And then actually, you'll see in some of the other projects, COVID-19 has had a supply chain impact on some of the electrical components and some of the materials that we're getting in. So again, we're still actually looking to pave in the next week or two. It's just some of the other work that's required for the equipment and some of the electrical work that we're pushing forward on. Just wanted to bring that to the committee's attention. So again, I mentioned some COVID-19 impacts. The vertical drywall screws, which are on the side of the bridge here that help it articulate up and down. It's actually a national shortage supply. So ours, again, we're enhancing the bridges and, enhancing the look, as you can see with the carpets and the paint, as well as enhancing some of the safety components. But a lot of airports that we've heard from Airbridge, the contractor, the airports that don't have functioning drywall screws, their bridges are basically just out of service. So luckily, again, we're doing this proactively when we can, so we're not getting into that kind of condition. And then again, as we like to do, is just hit on the Rockefeller PennDOT Airport Road construction out front. Again, the entrance has been impacted as you come through. You'll definitely notice it, but we're keeping an entrance in and out open at all times. It's just lane shifting as typical construction is. But again, they're working out front in full force. And then again, I mentioned some of the projects we're going to go through in the GA committee update, but you'll see a few here have actually been completed, which are going to come off the list. The ones we talked about last month are off the list, but again, just from a scheduling standpoint, the parking lot right now is a yellow, which we're monitoring with the timing of some of the submittals, but that's really the only change from last month. So any questions on that before we go into GA?
So just
Brian,
I don't know if you guys heard offline, Glenn and I were talking about this. Go ahead, Brian.
I just wanted to see if there's been any change with the Braden terminal. You talked about, any COVID affecting maybe some of the bidding, opening things up a little bit. Has there been any movement? I don't know. Can you just talk a little bit more detail about the Braden terminal just quickly?
Ryan, if that's going to come up in the GA portion of the presentation.
Yep.
Okay, no problem.
All right. Frank, did you have a question?
No.
All right, you just popped up. I had a quick one on the PennDOT funding for the multimodal grant.
Sure.
There's some conversation offline about a potential House bill that would seek authorization to borrow a substantial fund to keep PennDOT projects going. Do we know if that would have an impact on this potential PennDOT multimodal funding, or is that not part of the conversation?
I'm not sure. We'd have to look and see if it would be, but typically we wouldn't hear about that award until maybe spring or summer next year.
I got you.
So we'll have to see how that ties together.
Great.
But that number is not included in our current cash flow and projections at this point. So again, it's just additional.
The $3 million?
Correct. Yeah, it's just additional, again, that we're looking to help offset, some of the costs.
Glenn had mentioned that House bill, but he didn't mention the number. If he's on, can he mention the number so we can watch it?
You know what? Off the top of my head, Tara, I don't remember. I want to say it was 261, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. You'll have to look it up. Or, you know what? I'll dig for it while you guys meet. I know I have it somewhere.
Thanks, Glenn.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ryan related to capital projects? Right. Thank you, sir. And then I think we have Colin is going to lead us through our quarterly GA update.
Yeah, Colin and I will take this one together, but
Okay.
I'll have Colin start.
Thanks, Colin.
Okay, no problem. Well, good morning, everybody. The GA update, obviously we do this quarterly. This is an opportunity really to talk about information in regards to what's going on in the GA community at both Queen City and Braden Airport. I think that one of the things that I'm most proud of, and I think everybody else at this table is the amount of communication we've been able to continue to bring out to the GA community via the newsletter that we put out now, our social media, and also something that we created after some discussion with some of the GA groups in regards to the ability for them to have a two-way communication and get information to the LNAA, and in the same regard for us to respond. So the way we worked on that was we created a form on our GA website, on flyav.com, there's a GA section, and tenants, anybody in the GA community can submit concern, question, inquiry, suggestion, whatever it may be. As a group, directors get together, we discuss it, and then we report on it at the GA update. So when we announced this, we shared it with the LBGAA as well as our tenants and got the information out there. We got 3 since putting this out there, 3 submissions via the website, and this is our first opportunity really to sort of discuss what the 3 inquiries were in order to, again, create that two-way communication that the GA community is looking for. So the first one was the Braden Air Park, and what year date will the existing dilapidated T-hangars be either torn down or replaced or rehabilitated? Now, we've discussed this throughout the last several years. I think it's an ongoing project. We're doing a lot down at Braden Air Park. We've accomplished a lot down there, but there are some projects that are still out there. So I know Ryan will touch a little bit on the T-hangars and what we're doing in the T-hangars, I believe, Ryan, in your GA update. So we can obviously talk about that in the coming slides with Ryan and what sort of funding mechanisms may be there and some of the other things in regards to the T-hangars. Now, the Braden Air Park terminal, this came up actually during a Braden Air Park town hall meeting. And Tom, I don't know if this is something you want to weigh in on in regards to, or Ryan, in regards to the funding piece of it. There was $325,000 from the state, a matching $325,000 from the LNAA, and now there was a question of whether or not we could take that funding and shift it to another project. So Ryan, I don't know if you want to discuss that and if that's possible. Sure, yeah, I think to Colin's point, this came up a little while ago, and we did, broach the subject, with the state. And again, given the timing of where the funding was in the process, we'd already gone too far down the road in terms of utilizing some of the funds for the terminal. So we do have additional capital budget line items for extensions and other work down in Braden. But in terms of a timing perspective, that 325 couldn't be reallocated to the runway if that covers that. So when it comes to the Braden Air Park terminal, I know, Ryan, you'll touch a little bit more on that as we get into the future slides about capital projects. And the last one I actually came in and I can throw to Darren and Ryan. Will a restaurant be considered as part of the master plan at XLL? This is in relation to the Queen City Diner talking about closing. And we've always had this discussion, as well as what was referenced in the email itself was the talk of Braden Air Park and some development possibly after discussion with Forks Townships and other avenues falling into play. Is it possible to have some food and some retail or something in that area there? So that sparked somebody for Queen City that wanted to know if a restaurant would be considered for the master plan. Ryan, I don't know if this is something, or Darren, in regards to something in which we'd be able to entertain or talk to people that may have interest in doing that. Yeah, I'll start there. Yeah, at this point we do, in terms of the master plan, which we'll go into a little bit more later, we do show, a expanded and newer terminal facility where we do list a restaurant as an option. Other than, you know, the physical space, that's really all we looked at from the master plan standpoint, but I think it's something that we've talked about, if we could do, would be great.
Yeah, sure, and we're always open to those types of things, you know, if there's an operator looking for a spot or that wants to do it. I mean, airport restaurants, sometimes they're very successful, sometimes not so successful, depending, you know, it's gotta be, you know, we'd have to have an operator that was willing to make that investment and do it, but yeah, we'd certainly be open to discussing.
Might be challenging right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, today's environment wouldn't probably work in today's, with the facilities at Queen City, we don't have a spot for it right now either, that's the other thing, you know, but I think there's probably, if someone wanted to build a freestanding building, we could look at those options, but it's, you know.
And that was sort of reference was in the email in itself, was that there's no supporting, you know, complete supporting evidence behind a success of one versus not of one, but also that there have been some that have been successful and some that have not been successful. So again, those were the three. So we encourage, and obviously the GA community, to continue to use this website submission form that is on Queen City as well as Braden Airpark. One of the other things I wanted to mention.
Hey, before you move on,
yes,
Colin, just quickly. So you talked about two-way communication.
Yes.
What has our response been back to those inquiries? Thank
So,
you for your submittal.
Yes, so we thank you, sir, for the submittal to that inquiry. I've actually spoken to all three of the individuals in regards to their submission. So yeah, we respond back. We'll obviously, after speaking about it here publicly today, we'll continue to follow up because I think that those are items in which are ongoing. And I think it's not an open and shut case to a lot of those sort of inquiries. You know, a restaurant still, you know, we talked about it, hey, possibility. The T hangars, we're trying to make progress on that down at Braden Airpark. So we'll continue to keep it ongoing, and I'll show you exactly what I mean by that in the next minute or two. One of the things I wanted to talk about in regards to the Queen City Airport was Ryan talked about the master plan. We had done this very successful, the Braden Airpark discussion that we did virtually. We're going to do one for Queen City. We're going to send out an email today, December 10th from 11:30 to 12. An opportunity for Ryan, Darren, as well as Tom to sit down and talk about what's going on at Queen City Airport. Great exchange of information, obviously with the master plan coming into focus. A way to, again, put that information out there. So we're going to send this out as well as a YouTube link. We shared it for Braden. And of course, we'll continue to do it for Queen City. I did want to mention also that there was some inquiries about the GA holiday party, obviously canceled due to the COVID, but hopefully in 2021, we have the ability to come together again. So that, I don't know if you can call up the website and one of the things. So to the question about, let's see, there it is. So what we've done is, back when there were town hall meetings, there were suggestions and projects and ongoing projects when it comes to the T hangars, hangar development, the restaurant, murals. These are a lot of things that, you know, have been brought up and we've worked through and communicate with the GA community. But they wanted a place to go in order to see if things are completed, where they are in the process. So we created actually an initiatives page for each of the GA airports on Queen City and Braden in order to allow and see and share the information with everyone publicly so that we can update it. It's a living document. So as things come in, for example, a couple of the items that were submitted were actually already on the list. So the T hangars and the restaurant, as well as the runway lengthening, were already on there. Obviously, you know, we've discussed those things before. But as more come in, we wanted a space to put them, and that's exactly where they'll go, retrospective to each one of the GA airports. So someone can click on that link, it takes them to a PDF, and it breaks down the project and where it is, ongoing, complete, declined, whatever it may be. So it's an opportunity really for everybody to access the information at real time. So we'll continue to work. I know that the LVGAA was looking for this, to put this out there, and we've worked on it, and now it's up on the website. So a real good opportunity, again, to get the information out there and share it with the GA community. So I've rambled a little bit, but Ryan, I know for sure, has some capital updates in regards to the Braden Airpark terminal. So I'll turn it over to Ryan to talk a little bit about capital.
All right, so as I mentioned before, just going to run through the list of some of our GA-related capital projects. Again, as we talked about, Hangar 11 project completed. There are some of the final pay applications and, some of the final closeout documents, but there's really, again, nothing at this point that we're looking at other than those pieces. Grain terminal building, again, we mentioned, and Brian, to your question, we haven't heard any issues currently from the building supplier at this point in terms of potential delays. But basically, what we're looking is we received the final proposal this past Friday that we're looking at with the engineer, and staff internally. But basically tying the two together from a timing perspective of the building delivery in the spring of next year to coincide with the site work from a timing perspective, so we're not bringing the building out now, and working through some issues while we still have the site work to do as well. So again, that is moving forward, and then just kind of working behind the scenes with some of the grant funding as we talked about, get the paperwork in place so we're good to really hit the ground running in the spring. Talked about the master plan a little bit, but again, as Colin alluded to, we got the town hall that we're looking to do. It is actually good timing. So we submitted the draft of the report and the airport layout plan to the FAA. Since then, reached out to them to set up a follow-up, kind of a virtual page turn, December 4th, next Friday. So after that, we might get some comments back that we can obviously bring back to the workshop on the 10th. But we'll go through some of the projects, which I know we've talked a little bit before at the last GA update, but we'll go through some of the projects, the phasing that we're thinking, again, as part of those conversations.
Ryan, one question with that.
Yep.
I know that there was some discussion about helicopter. Oh, I don't in front of me.
Yeah,
I'll shoot you. I'll shoot you an email.
That's fine. Yeah, I think it was. We did get a comment at the workshop, I think last year, about the helicopter landing pads and where they'd be located. So there weren't any safety concerns. But yeah, if you want to send it, just to confirm. You hit next to it. It's not going. There we go. So obstruction removal down at Queen City, we've talked about in the past, but the first phase of this has also been completed. About a couple weeks ago, they did all the final grading and seeding. As you can see the picture on the right. So again, same thing, just really working through the final documents and the pay applications. Next spring, the contractor will come back out and just confirm from the Conservation District perspective that everything's been established and they can remove all of the filter socks and everything else they have in place. But again, that's a big one to get off the list, which we're definitely happy about. We'll get into the next phase here in a minute.
Ryan, what has the feedback been like from the GA community on the obstruction removal? Is everybody happy more or less with the work that's been completed?
Yeah, I haven't heard much. I know Kimmy would probably have more down at Queen City, but
I haven't heard anything recently.
Yeah, the bigger push might be when we get the actual night restrictions lifted, which is part of the second phase. I think that'll be more of get people's attention. So the next event, I don't know why it's not moving forward. But keep going. There we go. So Hangar 7 fire suppression system. This one actually we finished ahead of schedule from what we were looking at before. Final testing and inspection was completed at the end of October last month. Again, the phones were put into service. It is, just as a reminder, that environmentally friendly fluorine-free foam that we have. You can see the test there on the right on the ramp. We did have budgeted for next year some of the civil work as it relates to stormwater, or our stormwater plan that we're going to do next year as a different part of the project. But then again, waiting final invoices and closeout documents. But that was a successful project that we've been looking to do for a long time as well, that I think will definitely be helpful to have in place. Talked about obstruction removal, the second phase. As you may recall, we did get the grants earlier this year. So we're currently contacting some of the homeowners that are impacted about the schedule for next spring and some of the replacement tree plantings that we're offering. Again, notice of award was issued, we're finalizing the review of the documents, and then at this point, looking to start construction in spring of next year. But you can see in the image, the green was what was completed in phase one, and then the hatch is really what's phase two. So pretty large area, at least on the, this is on the 15 end. There's some additional, 1-2 trees on some property owners that we're coordinating with. But this is really the next biggest piece that, that'll help us with that, the night landing restrictions. So we've talked about this, I think, at the last GA update regarding an upcoming project where we did receive the grant for rehabilitating runway 1533, starting the design down at Queen City. So it's about a 12-month design, multi-year construction. This is a 100% federally funded grant, similar to obstruction removal. Forgot to mention that. This one's about $340,000. They did complete some of the asphalt and soil borings earlier this month, so we're looking through the detail on that with the engineer. And then just something to keep in mind, we're working through 30% design. Hopefully later in December we can go through. But the one thing here is the 12-month design cycle. So what that means is next FAA funding cycle in 2021, which comes out in April, May, the FAA actually shifted their grant application process earlier. We won't actually see another grant for this next year. It'll be the following year in 2022. Because the design, again, being about 12 months, we're assuming about October, November, end of 2021 completing it. So just to keep that in mind from a timing perspective, we're looking to get the first phase of the construction grant for 2022. But again, working through that, you can see the red, again, was just from the pavement condition index, which is what we're looking to do now. But again, just going through with that rehabilitation. And as we did at the last update, just talk a little bit about the upcoming projects, and Colin alluded to it a little bit. So the capital budget window actually just opened, and they always do this at the perfect time. So it opened on Friday, last Friday on the 20th, and applications are due by December 4th. So it's not like there's a holiday in the middle there or anything, but we'll work to get that submitted. Basically, what we're looking to submit, similar to I think we talked about last time, was the last time these were submitted as whole large projects, they weren't awarded, and when we had conversations with PennDOT, it was about breaking out the civil and the construction component to make it more manageable for the state to award it in phases. So working with the engineer right now just to get some of the civil work covered for as much as we can maybe get here for Queen City, and then for replacement T-hanger at Braden. And I think what we mentioned before is really until we get a new T-hanger up at Braden or there's any immediate concerns, that's really when we would address the current set of T-hangers down at Braden Air Park. So again, working with the state, if we apply with this funding cycle, as I mentioned before, with the connector, we'll likely hear something around spring, summertime of next year. And then we can start that process rolling. So still a little bit of time, but we're working through the process to really get everything in the queue. And I believe that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions?
Ryan, just a quick comment. Thanks for applying for that. I know we talked about that in the
Yep, no, not a problem.
in the past, and I don't know that to the GA community specifically in response to the T-hangers, but perhaps we could communicate to that person that we're applying for PennDOT grants for that.
Yeah, we can coordinate with Colin on that. It's fine. Yep.
Well, the aggressive pursuit of those grants too. So it's one thing to lob the application over the wall. It's another thing to make sure that we're doing everything we can do to secure both this and the multimodal grants. I know you guys have a good track record. This is, it's just something we want to bird dog, particularly in this critical year ahead of us.
Right, yeah, I know Colin and I have been working together on just some of the outreach and who from the state we can contact and some of our other constituents. So we'll continue that push.
If, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you. That was a question I had for you, Ryan. Do we have a grant application software of any kind? I mean, do we have some kind of a system that looks out for us automatically?
So,
Anything like that?
like in terms of when the applications basically are live or come out, is that what you mean?
Right. In other words, do we have something in place that scans that for us, or do we have a service or some kind of a company that supplies us that kind of information instead of just relying on, this news release or this letter or those kind of things? Do we have any kind of proactive system for applying for grants?
Yeah, so PennDOT has its website that we're a part of, which they send us notifications. Some of our consultants are getting a lot of the same information, and then I know there's some other.
Yeah, so one of the other things that we do for the legislative perspective is we consistently meet with our legislators within the region to update them, not just on, projects here at ABE, but also the GA projects, which allows them really a lot of the times when things are happening, they also reach out to us because it's on their radar as well. So we do that multiple times throughout the year in order to ensure that that communication is there. Because getting their support and having them also in Harrisburg being the group that is advocating is certainly critical.
No, yes, and I understand having that legislative support is critical to us receiving and being awarded the grants. And I'm not trying to cut that out, Colin. I'm just asking. I had been in discussion with somebody, and I don't want to derail this meeting. I'll tell you what, offline I'll get into it, but I was in a discussion with a county authority in Chester, and they actually have an automated system that looks for state and federal grants that that would be available to them. And this system is automated, it's updated by a third party that's pretty much what they do. So I do understand that they may have an airport module. So
it does sound like a good offline discussion for Tom, because I know there's the grants that we are not aware of and could be missing out on, which is what you're talking about. And I want to make sure that we nail down the grants that we are aware of and we do apply for, and that we do everything we can there. So Tom, maybe you can work to, not just for GA obviously, but generally speaking, work to pull something together for our better understanding. But let's let Ryan finish up his presentation here.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize.
Yep. No, that's fine. No, that's really all I had at this point.
Oh, okay. I open the floor to any other questions for Ryan then.
Ryan, Larry Hemberger, I just had a comment. As far as a restaurant at Queen City, we've looked at that time and time and time again, and it just does not make financial sense to do that. However, what we were able to do was, if people were coming in and wanted to go to the restaurant, we would make the van available. And if we had staff, we would drive them over to the restaurant. We even applied to a Queen City restaurant to put in an aviator's breakfast, maybe to entice some people. But there was little interest, except for a couple people would want to come in and go over to Bethlehem or do something, fly in and spend the day. And we looked into getting a crew car that could be used by some of these folks. It's a dead issue at this point, but it's been out there for a long, long time. That's all, just food for thought. That's it.
I would just, to that end, and I'm looking at Frank right now, is there a collaborative opportunity with the Allentown Chamber of Commerce to pull together a group of restaurants that may be able to do like a Grubhub, DoorDash type of thing special for Queen City, right? And it sounds like a neat little opportunity to just, like you said, Larry, like an aviator's lunch, or just kind of let some folks know that we have interesting people flying into Queen City all the time, and there's a specific need that they may be able to address.
It's a great idea.
Cool. And I'm sure there'll be a mayor in the future of Allentown that's that would consider collaborating with the authority on attracting a restaurant to replace Queen City, and specifically serve the needs of the GA community. Somebody out there, I'm sure. Any other comments for Ryan or for Colin? All right, thanks, guys. Do we have any new business for the business or any new business for the business committee?
I just wanted to make a note that the bill that we were talking about before, I have somebody looking for the number, but this session officially ends on 11:30, so there's nothing scheduled for the rest of the year, so the likelihood of passing anything is probably unlikely. So anything that hasn't passed, they'll have to start over in January. So I don't think, or else my contact there says they don't believe that that's going to pass by the 30th because there's no other days scheduled. So I don't think we have to worry too much about that.
Well, actually, we want the bill to pass because that would authorize PennDOT to pursue the bond. That's what I'm saying. The problem is the funding, the $600 million needs to be authorized by the legislature before the 30th of November in order for PennDOT to continue funding projects moving forward.
Right. So,
Hey.
So I guess the likelihood of that happening is it's probably not going to happen.
Can we get Colin, do you think you can look into putting on your government relations hat, look into it and report back to the board by tomorrow?
Yes.
Thank you.
I did send the email to Savette, to Matt, Tara, Brian, that I got. So it's in the email. Savette has it in her email as well as Tom Stout has it in his email. So
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
If there's no other new business, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Brian. We're adjourned. And I think, Sylvette, if you're okay, we can just slide right into the executive committee. I know we have some attorneys on that we're paying to join us and listen to us talk about exciting local topics.
Sure.
I'm gonna pull up the agenda real quick. And I welcome everybody to the November meeting of the LNAA Executive Committee. Could you go ahead and jump in with a roll call, Sylvette?
Sure thing. Matt Turk,
I'm here.
Glenn Geisinger,
present.
John Hayes,
Here.
Ted Rosenberger, Tyler Zrinsky.
Here.
Excellent, thank you. Sounds like we have a quorum.
Yes.
That's correct.
Perfect. Do we have any public comment for the executive committee?
We do not, sir.
Very good. We'll move on to, we have, looks like just 3 action items that should move pretty quickly. First, I hope you've had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes of October 22nd. And if so, I'd ask for a motion to approve those meeting minutes.
So move.
Thank you, John. Second, please.
Second.
Tara, thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes of October 22nd, 2020, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Same for the Florio Perucci invoices from October 2020. They're in Novus, so you can take a look. I'd ask for a motion to approve the October 2020 Florio Perucci invoice.
So move.
Thank you, John. Second.
A second.
Thanks, Tara. All in favor of approving the invoice, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, invoices are approved. Final item is closing resolutions for Rockley High Valley. Darren, I think you're going to walk us through these.
Sure, thanks, Matt. This should be pretty quick as well. You're really just administrative. We need 2 separate resolutions approved, one for Lot 6 in East Allen, one for Lot 5A in Hanover. Basically, this is just resolutions authorizing the executive director to complete any of the closing items and sign all the documents. So we've signed these in the past for closings, pretty simple.
Certainly by the judge.
Yeah, these were drawn up and reviewed by the solicitor's office and also by Rockefeller's legal team as well. So certainly take any questions, but if not, we'd look to do them as 2 separate resolutions.
All right, does anyone have any questions for Darren related to these resolutions? No? Okay, so we need an approval for each separate resolution here, Darren?
Yeah, that's correct. So let's do Lot 5A in Hanover Township first.
Okay, it asks for a motion to approve the resolution for Lot 5A in Hanover Township.
So moved.
Thank you, Glenn. A second, please.
Second.
Thanks, John. Any additional discussion required? If not, I'd ask for a vote to approve the motion as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion's approved. Finally, the next one is Lot 6. Is that correct, Aaron?
Lot 6 in East Allen Township, yes.
Okay. It asks for a motion to approve the execution of the closing document for Lot 6 in East Allen Township. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, John. Second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tara. Any additional discussion? If not, I'd ask for a vote to approve the motion as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion's approved. That should be the end of Rock Lehigh Valley. Is that correct? Our negotiation and dealing with them, Darren?
Yeah, there are a couple minor closeout things maybe after the fact, but for the most part, it should be it.
All right, cool. There you go, Tom. It's all yours. Final, so that closes out our action items. Darren, are you going to provide us with an update on development?
Everything I would do would be in exec session, so.
Very good. I would then ask if anybody has any new business to present to the committee. None, thank you. I believe, Judge, maybe you can describe the nature of the executive session that we're going to request.
The executive session will relate to it's covered by the real estate matter exception in the open meetings law. So it is appropriate for an executive session.
Excellent. I'd ask for a motion to move into executive session, please.
And there will be no vote coming out of this.
Is that correct, Judge?
As I understand it, there will be no vote. It is merely an information provision opportunity.
So we'll come out and immediately adjourn in all likelihood. Ask for that motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Thank you, John. You need a second, I believe.